Everyone is well aware of the 2-week Minecraft phase. You hop on, play it for about 2 weeks, and then hop off until the next year. What I never hear anyone talk about is another nearly identical phase that many gamers go through, which is the 2-week Terraria phase. These two yearly phases, though they may seem like exactly the same thing, are actually very different from one another. Despite the two games being rather similar in many ways, the difference in experience couldn't be any more stark. The reasons we start these 2-week Minecraft phases is a lot more obvious to most of you. A lot of people initially start their yearly playthrough with the goal of recapturing the magic we first had with the game back when we were kids. It's like chasing an innocent purple dragon that we can never get a hold of again. We're grown up now, and the game is far less enchanting than it once was. Obviously, because the game isn't a mystery to us anymore. We know how to basically do everything in the game at this point, and a lot of the updates over the years have removed certain aspects of charm the game once had. Overall, it just doesn't and will never feel the same, which is typically why the Minecraft phase only lasts 2 weeks at the max. But that entire 2 weeks period is some of the most peaceful gaming you'll ever do. Though it can't recapture the magic, it certainly does bring you back for a bit and helps you reminisce on all the fond memories we have with this game. Terraria's phase, on the other hand, is actual hell, in the best way possible. Now with Terraria, the same reasons as Minecraft do hold some truth too. After all, Terraria for a lot of us is a very nostalgic game, seeing as its arguable peak of popularity was during the same era as Minecraft. And while that may be the reason we initially start our yearly playthroughs, the Terraria phase is so much different to Minecraft's, because the yearly Minecraft playthrough only lasts around 2 weeks due to eventual boredom. Meanwhile, Terraria's phase can be anywhere from a week to 2 weeks or even up to a month long and further beyond. And this is all due to the addicting way that Terraria is designed. The start of a Terraria playthrough, to put it bluntly, is absolute torture. You start off with nothing, scraping some semblance of a house together as you go off into the world and underground in search of loot to beef up your character. The only thing stopping you are the many monsters that plague the game. You are so weak in the early game. You have no extra health yet, all of your weapons do next to no damage, and you have no armor to protect yourself. It is incredibly easy to die during this phase of the game, and honestly, this is what separates the boys from the men. Many will and have not been able to handle this part of the game and do quit early on, especially on the harder difficulties like expert or master that increase the challenge tenfold. Eventually though, you do progress, getting some decent weaponry that starts to really hurt these monsters that have caused you so much pain, along with a decent set of armor that toughens you up just that bit extra, and it quickly feels like you're not the same weak character you started off as. The progress is very easy to see and feel. Now, if this was all the game had to offer, mining and looting, then the game would get pretty old fast and face the same problems the Minecraft phase does. But then, one single message that appears at night will change everything. You feel an evil presence watching you. The Eye of Cthulhu is typically the first boss many will face in their playthroughs, unless you manage to find the King Slime or Queen Bee before that. If you don't manage to spawn it by the time you reach 200 max health and don yourself with some okay armor, then the game will force this fight onto you almost as a skill check, leaving you with no choice but to fight your first boss. Now, being a first boss, this isn't exactly the most intense fight, although it can get that way on expert at times with these powerful charge attacks. For the most part, for us players having yet another yearly phase like this, it's child's play. We've done this fight countless times, and so it's pretty much a done deal. And after you've defeated the Eye of Cthulhu, that's it. There's no going back. You can't stop it now. This is where the Terraria yearly phase truly begins. I've always had the opinion, and some people may and have disagreed with me before, but in my opinion, Terraria has never really been a survival game such as Minecraft. To me, the true essence of Terraria has always made it a boss rush game, more in line with games like Mega Man, Cuphead, or shit, even Elden Ring. Now that we've defeated this first boss, we cannot stop. We have to run the gauntlet. There's something in every die-hard Terraria players' brains that just don't let us quit until the end. And with there being a whopping 8 pre-hard mode bosses, 11 hard mode bosses, and 14 event bosses, adding up to 33 in total, the gameplay in between these fights, while it can be spent on miscellaneous things like building, fishing, and other activities, mostly this portion of the gameplay is typically spent preparing for the next boss, whether that's gearing up, making potions, or building arenas for your triumphant insane battles. Every one of these bosses are well designed in their own right, and although most are incredibly challenging and will have you raging, defeating them is just as rewarding. Not only because of the amazing loot that they'll drop, but the satisfaction that comes with finally defeating these difficult foes. And this is the entire reason you can't really say for certain just how long a Terraria phase will last, seeing as when you make your way through these bosses, once you eventually get to the Moon Lord and defeat him, then the game is truly over, officially marking the end of your yearly phase until next time. So of course, when this is the margin for when it ends, that is wholly up to the player's pacing and skill. Some players can defeat the Moon Lord within a week, others it'll take them 2 weeks, others a month. There is no set in stone time for how long the yearly Terraria phase lasts. The only constant is that it ends once you've beaten the game. This is the key difference between a Minecraft phase and a Terraria phase. After all, the game is a lot more linear than something like Minecraft, so this is fairly obvious. Sure, Minecraft has bosses such as the Ender Dragon, the Wither, and the new Warden if you count that, but these days those bosses never really feel like they're a necessity, and so there really is never a concrete goal when you play Minecraft. This is obviously one of the game's strengths, but it also means it's a lot easier to get bored, as after a while the novelty wears off. Terraria being designed around these bosses keeps the player fully engaged during this phase, only helped further by the fact that these bosses are literally required to unlock certain ores, tools, or are literally blocking you off from accessing half the game's content. It is impossible to play Terraria without fighting any of these bosses. They are the game, and so this is what keeps players continuously playing during this phase. But that does still leave one question unanswered. Why do Terraria players keep coming back? After all, Terraria, as I've said, is a very linear game. You're fighting the same bosses each playthrough unless you add mods into the mix. Wouldn't that perhaps get a little bit old? The solution to this is actually rather simple. The key being the replayability that Terraria offers you. And I'm not even talking about mods here, which also does help with this. I'm only talking about vanilla Terraria here. When you start a new playthrough each year, there is one simple question you must ask yourself before you get started on your quest to defeat every boss. What class will you play? With a choice of melee, ranged, magic, summoning, or perhaps a mixture of them all, this is how you can make every playthrough just that bit different. The classes add simple replayability because each of these playstyles acts in an entirely different way, having different playstyles and requiring totally different items to get for their respective builds. Whether you tank enemies with melee, opting to keep up close and personal to the enemy, ranged to stay a safe distance and shoot bullets or arrows from a longer range, magic to use a plethora of spells for yourself, or summon where you can become gay just like your favorite JoJo character. It is so easy to make every early playthrough of this game feel fresher than the last because you can just try out a new playstyle you've never done before. I typically like to go ranged each time I play because it logically makes sense to keep your distance from all of these bosses, and I do enjoy the thrill of trying to kite them as I'm shooting. But if I was ever feeling bored of this playstyle, I could easily just give any one of these other classes a try. It shakes up the game in a meaningful way that pairs perfectly with the boss focus of the game. Every boss does call for different strategies when you go for a different class, and so it does transform into an entirely new fight each time. It's this addicting gameplay loop that keeps us playing, and how fresh a playthrough can feel that keeps on bringing us back. Although, I was too quick to dismiss the nostalgic factor, as that definitely comes into play too. At least for me. Terraria holds just as much nostalgia as Minecraft for myself, and although these experiences couldn't be any more different from each other, it really does take me back to my teenage years, reminding me of when I played this game with my friends as we pulled together all of our resources to defeat each boss, goofing around with PvP, or whatever it may be. The Terraria phase I have each year, although far more sweaty than how I used to play it, still does hold some of that magic. You forget a lot of things about this game due to just how much content it has. You forget how deep you can dig underground, how hard each boss can be, and just how terrifying it is to go down into hell. There are so many esoteric things the game has in store for you, and each time you find something you forgot about the game, it feels like that magic is still there. Even something as simple as hearing all the familiar music in the game really does take you back. Honestly, we don't give the Terraria OST enough credit, because this is easily one of the most banger soundtracks in all of gaming. These reasons and more are inherently why we keep on coming back to this game every year, dominating every boss in the game as we finish with the Moon Lord, quitting the game until the next year to do it all over again. It's a vicious cycle that's filled with many emotions such as nostalgia, joy, hype, rage, irritation, fury, and okay, yeah, there's a lot of anger anger here. But despite my rage, I push on forward because I have to beat the game every time I hit that create world button. And though many people do just play Terraria non-stop to this day, I think a lot of people share my sentiment, and I believe these are the reasons we all come back for it. I'm ending this year's phase for now with this video, but I'm sure I will return in a year's time, as I always tend to do.